Kevin Costner's 10 Best Yellowstone Quotes as John Dutton. Kevin Costner's John Dutton II is like an oracle in Yellowstone. He has many quotable moments that guide his family through the high-stakes circumstances they encounter protecting the largest contiguous ranch in the United States. Many of John's best quotes in Yellowstone reflect the nature of his tough love approach, whether in raising his children or educating his peers. John Dutton is a realist. However, he also has a sentimental quality that makes for some of Costner's best moments in Yellowstone. Some of my favorite remarks by John Dutton are to Beth Kelly Rayleigh. The way that John's daughter pushes him out of his comfort zone elicits some of Costner's most humorous moments on the show. Additionally, John's best quotes offer advice to those closest to him. Dutton was equally insightful to the Yellowstone characters he loved the most, like Beth and Case, Luke Grimes, as he was to his enemies. One quote in the Yellowstone series premiere establishes John Dutton's mission to preserve the land his family had occupied for over 130 years. After the episode's opening scene shows John Dutton putting down his horse amid a truck crash, Jamie successfully argues against eminent domain for a proposed residential complex on the Yellowstone ranch. After the case is dismissed, Jamie gets a more informal plea. Jamie's opponent wanted a housing complex on 30,000 acres of the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch. Later, Jamie pitches the deal to his father, telling him they could use the money and the leverage it would afford them. This memorable quote from John Dutton establishes the show's theme that nothing is more valuable than the land the Yellowstone Ranch sits on, and people will relentlessly try to take it from its stewards. John Dutton's quote from Yellowstone Season 2, Episode 4, is essential to his worldview. The outing's title, Only Devils Left, partially contains the quote, highlighting its importance to the whole series. Malcolm, Neil McDonough, Ann Thielbeck, Terry Serpico visit John during the outing in response to Dan Jenkins, Danny Huston, and Thomas Rainwater's Gil Birmingham agreement to build a casino and hotel outside Yellowstone National Park. John isn't expecting the Beck brothers' visit, causing tension with Rip Wheeler, Kohlhauser, when they arrive seemingly unannounced. John talks to the brothers without Jamie. When he walks away from the conversation, Jamie warns his father that making a deal with the Beck brothers is like a deal with the devil. John remarks that all the angels are gone, and only devils remain, crediting the Beck brothers for admitting their evil intentions outright. When Case returns to the ranch and becomes foreman, operations shift, and Beth talks to her father about it. Beth is angry about her father's treatment of Rip, who lives in the bunkhouse, and cleans out horse stalls after John moves his top cowboys around. Rip formerly lived in the foreman's house, which went to Case when he moved back to the ranch and assumed the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch foreman position. Beth is frustrated with her father's choices because John is Rip's father figure, and she thinks the former foreman should stay in the house. When John insists that Rip has no interest in staying in the lodge and that his sacrifice will be rewarded, Beth backs away from the subject. When he sees that his daughter is satisfied with his answer, John tells Beth to go ruin someone else's day. Beth replies, "That's the plan, Daddy." After the Beck brothers kill John's cattle for refusing to work with them, Dutton marches into Dan Jenkins' office and confronts him about their shared problem. Despite refusing to work with the Beck brothers because they had a shared enemy, John quickly teams up with Dan and Rainwater to take out a different shared enemy. However, before seeking a pact, John assaults Jenkins' security officer. Dan and John plan to meet with Thomas Rainwater as Jenkins' security guard gets his bearings and comes to do his job. When he arrives, Dan informs his security guard that he's late and tells him to wait outside. As John leaves the Paradise Valley Capital Development, Jenkins' security guard tells Dutton, "That was a nice move." But Dutton says it wasn't any particular move. He's just the meaner of the two. In the opening scene of Yellowstone Season 3, Episode 3, Unacceptable Surrender, John whispers this quote to his grandson, Tate, Brecken Merrill. In the fallout of being traumatically kidnapped by the Beck brothers, Tate goes camping with his parents and grandfather. When Case's son wakes up early, he finds John Dutton crouched, looking out over a pasture, watching a cow elk lead a wolf away from her baby. When Tate joins his grandfather's side in the early morning light, John Dutton tells him he wants to see the baby cow elk live, leading Tate to the field. John then instructs his grandson to mark the territory with their morning bathroom break, further to knock the wolf off the baby's tracks. The moment was sentimental for John, amplified by spending it with his grandson, and the self-awareness of the best part of Costner's Yellowstone performance made for a memorable quote. In the closing line of Yellowstone Season 3, Episode 5, Cowboys and Dreamers, John passes the torch to Case, who is taking his place running the ranch. It's a memorable quote from John because it's pretty hopeful and gives his son an open door to be himself. John traditionally wanted to control Case's decisions, so watching him step back and appreciate him doing things his way is memorable. Case also works as a livestock commissioner, and when a local horse breeder dies and leaves his family behind, Case wants to help them. As the lion holder prepares to foreclose on Boyd Nelson's house, Case prepares to put his remaining animals in a sale to raise some money for his family. After Case successfully executes his plan, John tells his son he did well, but passes on the opportunity to celebrate with the other cowboys. Yellowstone Season 3 is full of memorable quotes from John Dutton, with a particularly heartfelt comment to Beth arising in Episode 7, The Beating. As John and Beth discuss matters by the fire, John pivots to something more personal, seeking confirmation that his daughter will marry Rip. Beth says it depends on whether Rip asks her, but John Dutton says the foreman never will. In the conversation he prompts, John tells Beth that if she wants to marry Rip, she'll have to ask for it herself. Subsequently, the father gives his blessing when Beth says it will make her happy. It's a candid moment for John and Beth, so the father also takes a moment to apologize for Beth's feeling like she couldn't go to him about her abortion, which ends with Jamie's devastating decision. Beth begins to cry amid her father's apology, responding, "I know it now." In the penultimate episode of Yellowstone Season 3, Episode 9, Meaner Than Evil, John Dutton makes a memorable remark that is the episode's namesake. John Dutton is sitting on the front porch of the family's lodge when Case comes out, ultimately apologizing for bringing up gruesome ranch business at the table. John tells his son that there shouldn't be gruesome things to discuss in the first place, but that's life. John subsequently tells Case that he can't reason with evil, offering another nugget of advice, this time about how his predecessor can balance running the ranch with having a family. John's quote suggests that Case must balance fighting for the ranch while maintaining a tranquil life with Tate and Monica, Kelsey Asbill. However, Case's decision regarding the fate of the Dutton Ranch bought Case's freedom in Yellowstone, meaning he didn't have to make the same sacrifices his father made. John's memorable quotes have a political edge in Seasons 4 and 5 as the rancher runs for governor. John Dutton drops this memorable remark during his acceptance speech for Governor Linnell Perry's, Wendy Moniz, endorsement. The quote is memorable for John, not just because it's part of a more substantial, formal speech for governor, but because the remark latches onto the zeitgeist and defines John's ideals and everything he runs for. Also in the speech, John says that there's a war being waged on their way of life in Montana. He tells his potential constituents that people will try to tell them that their self-sustaining way of life is immoral, and that it's just a lie to gain control of the land. Just before he delivers the memorable line, John says, The ugly truth is they want the land. And if they get it, it will never look like our land again. That is progress in today's terms. In the Yellowstone Season 5 premiere, John Dutton wins the election to become the next governor of Montana in the opening scene. As the news of John's win spreads around his campaign headquarters, John gets a call from his rival, Scott McMullen, Vince Duvall, who congratulates him on the race. When Scott tells John that he hopes the next governor will fight for his supporters, John delivers the quote over the phone. The Yellowstone quote encapsulates John's stubbornness as well as his passion. Still as stubborn as John is, when Scott says, "And please, try to keep all of Montana in mind when you're facing those tough decisions," John cordially says, "That's the plan." In this sentiment, John perfectly sums up his motivation for the entire series. He has fought his whole life for the ranch, preserving the land his family is stewards of.